Welcome to Top 10 USA, home of the Rocket platform. Please follow our replacement procedures and be sure to use appropriate ESD standards and techniques throughout the replacement process. If these procedures are not followed appropriately, damage to your SAN as well as data loss may occur. If your machine is covered under the Rocket Plus subscription and you have any questions or concerns throughout the replacement process, please open a ticket through the Rocket Platform customer portal. Your first step is to access the group manager of your Dell EqualLogic array. There are two methods to accessing your array. If you already know how to access the Dell EqualLogic Group Manager, please skip to 1 minute and 9 seconds. If you are utilizing SAN Headquarters, you will want to launch the SAN Headquarters client. Once SAN Headquarters is loaded, on the left-hand side of the page you will see a list of current groups managed by SAN Headquarters. From here you will need to select on the particular group with the current issue. You will right-click on the group name and select Launch Group Manager and log in using your login credentials. If you are accessing your Dell EqualLogic via web browser, you will open your web browser and in the address bar either enter the host name of the SAN or the management IP address. Once you see a login prompt, please enter your login credentials. Now that you are logged into the EqualLogic Group Manager, you are going to need to identify the EqualLogic array with the issue. On the left-hand side of the page, we are going to select on the particular array that currently has an indicator marking. In the center of the screen, you will see a row of tabs across the top of the page. You will need to go to the Maintenance tab of the Dell EqualLogic array. Toward the right-hand side of this tab, you are going to see identification information of the array. Be sure to click Start LED Flashing and then make note of the service tag of your Dell EqualLogic array. You will need the service tag and any LED indication turned on for any service procedure in order to identify the faulty SAN with ease. If either of these methods do not work or the machine is inaccessible, contact us directly. Before proceeding with this instructional, you must be warned that this procedure is delicate and it is recommended to have a professional guidance and supervision during the execution of this process. Failure to follow the procedure correctly will lead to total data loss with minuscule to no chance of recovery. Any chassis replacement performed without professional guidance and supervision will void any maintenance contract or warranty on the machine and any relevant parts. Using the LED indication light you had turned on earlier, locate the array. The array will have every indication light on the machine flashing. Verify that this is the correct array using the service tag from the Group Manager. The service tag of the array should be located on a sticker in the rear of the array next to the controller slots. Once the array has been identified, you must turn off the indicator lights. Enter back into the Group Manager and select the member with the faulty chassis. Navigate back to the Maintenance tab, and on the right-hand side of this page, select the option Stop LEDs Flashing. The replacement of the chassis will take the array offline for approximately 1 hour, and will require some preparatory steps to ensure the replacement goes smoothly. Schedule a work window to set a time to replace the chassis. While waiting for an appropriate time to begin the replacement, head to the front of the array. Depending on personal preference, you may have left a faceplate attached to cover your array. If the faceplate is attached to the array, take your Dell-issued key and turn the lock in a clockwise direction. Next to the lock you will see a little black tab. Lift up on the tab, and the faceplate locking mechanism will release, allowing you to remove the faceplate. When it comes time to replace the chassis, the drives will have to be seated into the correlating slots on the replacement chassis, meaning that the drive in slot 0 on the current chassis must be seated into the drive bay slot 0 on the replacement chassis, or the controllers will not be able to read the RAID configuration, causing the member to become unable to boot. To prevent the drives from being inserted into the incorrect slot, label the drives according to which slot the drives reside in. The drive slots begin with slot 0 and end with slot 23, and are oriented left to right, up to down. Make sure not to cover any of the ventilation slots on the drive trays to allow the necessary airflow to cool the machine. Once you have labeled all your drives, head to the rear of the array. The controllers will have to go back to their specific slot on the replacement chassis. The cables of the array must also be inserted into the correlating slots on the replacement chassis, meaning the cable plugged into the top controller ETH0 on the current chassis must be plugged into the top controller ETH0 on the replacement chassis. Label the controllers according to their slots, and then label the cables according to how they are currently oriented. Once you have completely labeled your cables, you have finished the preparatory steps to the chassis replacement. Wait for the work window to begin, and then head back to the Group Manager. Now that the time has come to replace the chassis, we must first offline the volumes associated with the array, prior to shutting the array down. On the bottom left-hand side of the Group Manager, you will see the tab selection for the overlay. Select the Volumes tab Overlay. On the left-hand side of this overlay, expand on the Volumes tree. Select the first volume in the list. The information regarding this volume will appear in the right-hand side of the overlay. Toward the bottom of the information, you will see the volume distribution section. The bar for this section will display the name of the members of the volume is currently residing on. For multi-member pools, you will see the multiple arrays and their percent of distribution to the volume. Since the first volume in our list resides on the faulty member, it must be offlined prior to the replacement. On the left-hand side of the page, right-click on the name of the volume and select the option Set Offline. After selecting the option, a window will appear asking if you wish to proceed. Select the option Yes to continue. Work your way down your volumes list, offlining any volumes that reside on the faulty member. Once all the volumes associated with the faulty member have been offlined, you will have to shut the array down properly. Navigate back to the Group Overlay tab and select the member with the faulty chassis. Select the Maintenance tab, and toward the left-hand side of this tab, select the option Shut Down. After selecting the option, you will be prompted to enter the management password. After the management password has been input, the array will begin the shutdown process. Head to the rear of the array and wait for the shutdown process of the array to complete. To confirm the shutdown process has completed, look at the indication lights on the control modules. The controllers will show only the green power light and red error lights when the array has completed the shutdown process. If you see any indicator lights flashing in either of the ACCT light positions, then the array has not yet finished the shutdown process, and you must wait for the lights to go out and have only the green power light and any ERR lights active. Once you have confirmed that the array is fully shut down, flip the switches on the power supply to the off position. Now remove the cables from the back of the array. Once the cables have been removed, you must now remove the components from the rear of the array. Push in on the orange tab of the power supply while pulling back on the metal bar. Pull the power supply straight back out of the slot. Repeat this process on the alternate supply. After removing the power supplies, you will have to remove the control modules from the array. Push down on the orange tab in the center of the controller and swing the black arm behind it outwards. Once the arm of the controller has swung completely open, you'll be free to pull the controller straight back out of the slot. Apply the same process to the other controller. Once all of the components have been removed from the array, head towards the front. From the front of the array, you will see the drives in their drive slots. You must now remove the drives from the array. Depress on the tab of the drive, forcing the arm on the tray to begin to swing forward. Force the arm completely open using a light amount of force. Once the arm is completely open, you will be free to pull the drive straight back out of the slot. Repeat this process until all drives have been removed from the array. Once all the drives have been removed, all that will be left in the rack is an empty chassis. Remove the screws that are securing the array to the rack. Once you have confirmed there are no more screws securing the chassis, remove the chassis from the rack. Insert the replacement chassis into the now clear rack position. Use the screws on the chassis to secure it to the rack. Now that you have inserted the replacement chassis into the rack, you must now insert the components into the replacement chassis. Begin by inserting the drives into their drive bays. To insert the drive into its slot, open the arm on the drive tray completely. Insert the replacement drive into the correlating slot into the chassis, ensuring the drive connector is pointed inward towards the chassis and the tab of the tray on the left-hand side. When inserted around 90% of the way, the arm on the drive tray will begin to catch into its slot. Once the arm of the tray is in its slot, close the arm and the drive will seat the rest of the way. Repeat this process until all drives have been inserted into the array in their correlating slots. Once all of the drives have been inserted, cover the drive bays with the faceplate. The faceplate must first be slid into the right-hand bezel from the left. Once the faceplate is seated in the right-hand bezel, push straight back on the faceplate until you hear a clicking noise. Once you have heard the faceplate click into place, take your Dell issued key and turn the lock in a counterclockwise direction. Now head toward the rear of the array. You will now have to insert the rear components into the replacement chassis. Start with the control modules. To insert the control module into the slot, open the lever on the controller all the way. Insert the controller into its correlating slot, ensuring that the orange tab is on the top of the controller and the connector pins are facing in toward the center of the chassis. Push back until the lever begins to catch. Once the lever has begun to catch, push back on the lever until you see or hear the orange tab click into place. Attempt to pull straight back on the controller out of the slot without releasing the locking mechanism. If the controller stays in its slot, it has been properly seated. If the controller moves around in its slot, the controller has not been seated properly and will need to be reseated. Repeat this process with the alternate controller. After the controllers have been replaced, you will need to insert the power supplies. Take a power supply and insert it into one of the slots, ensuring that the connector pins are facing toward the center of the chassis and the orange tab is situated in the top left-hand side. Push the supply back until you hear or see the orange tab click into place. Pull back on the metal bar without releasing the locking mechanism. If the supply stays in its slot, then the supply has been properly seated. If the supply moves around in the slot, then the supply has not been properly seated and must be reseated. Repeat this process with the other supply. Now that all the components have been inserted into the replacement chassis, we must now insert the cables. Start with the networking cables. Insert each cable into the corresponding controller slot according to how you have them labeled. Once all of the network cables have been inserted, check the switches on your power supplies, and ensure they are still in the off position. If either of the switches have been turned to the on position during the removal and/or insertion process, switch them to the off position. Once you can confirm that both power supplies are in the off position, insert the power cables. This checking of the switch position will stop your array from receiving any improper voltage to the chassis while plugging in the power cables. Once the cables are inserted fully, flip the switches on the power supplies to the on position. Wait for your array to boot completely, then return to the group manager. The array will take around 10 to 20 minutes before becoming accessible in the GUI. Now that you are back in the group manager, confirm that the array is now showing healthy. If the array is back to a healthy status, you will now need to online the volumes that were offline previously. Go back into the volume overlay and online the volumes that have been offline. In order to online the volume, right-click on the volume name and select the option Set Online. If the errors persist or any other issues arise, please contact us directly. Thank you for choosing the Rocket Platform, the evolution of hardware maintenance.
Thanks for watching. This has been another video by the Top 10 USA Video Production Team. We look forward to sharing more content with you going forward, so please check out our YouTube channel and please subscribe so that you get notified whenever we release a new piece of content.